Have you ever wondered what happens after you finally stop trying? Not the dramatic ending, not the argument, not the goodbye, but the quiet moment after you decide you deserve peace more than confusion. Because here's something most people don't realize. The person who took you for granted doesn't always understand your value while you're there. They understand it when you're a peer. They understand it the first night your message doesn't appear. The first morning they wake up and realize no one is checking if they slept well. The first time something good happens and they have no one who celebrates it the way you did. And at first they tell themselves it doesn't matter. They distract themselves. They stay busy. They convince their ego that you'll come back. But slowly, something begins to shift. Because when someone loses a love that was genuine, patient and consistent, the silence feels different. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's heavy. They begin to replay conversations they once ignored. They start remembering the way you looked at them when you cared deeply. They think about the times you tried to explain how you felt, and they didn't really listen. And here's the part that truly changes everything. Regret doesn't appear when you leave. It appears when they realize you're not coming back undervalued. Because the version of you who tolerated being undervalued, the version of you who stayed even when you were hurting, that version doesn't return. So if you've ever felt like your love wasn't appreciated, if you've ever walked away quietly while they assumed you'd always stay, this message is for you. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't fighting harder, it's choosing yourself. And the moment you choose peace over proving your worth, that's often the moment their silent regret begins. Now let's talk about how that regret slowly grows and the signs it has already started. Part 1. When regret arrives quietly. Sometimes the deepest regret doesn't come with loud apologies or dramatic confessions. It arrives quietly. In the moment someone realizes they took the one person who truly cared for granted. And by the time that realization finally reaches their heart, the person who once loved them so patiently has already begun to walk away. When someone receives your love every day, it can start to feel ordinary. Your kindness becomes expected. Your kindness becomes expected. Your effort becomes invisible. Your presence begins to feel permanent, like something that will always be there no matter what. So they stop noticing the little things. They stop appreciating how you stayed when things were difficult. They stop recognizing how rare it is to find someone who loves without conditions. Slowly, without even meaning to, they begin treating your love like something they can return to any time. But one day, something changes. The messages become shorter, the warmth becomes quieter. The person who once tried so hard suddenly stops trying at all. And that's when it begins to sink in. Because the moment someone feels your absence where your love once lived, a different emotion starts growing inside them. Not anger, not confusion, regret. A quiet, heavy regret that follows them in moments when no one else is around. And what makes it even harder is this truth. By the time they understand what they lost, the version of you who loved them that way may already be gone. Part 2. The first shift, when something feels different. Regret doesn't arrive all at once. It begins with a small moment, so ordinary they almost ignore it. Maybe one evening they reach for their phone out of habit. For so long, your messages were always there. A simple, "How was your day?" A small check-in, a steady warmth that quietly followed them through their routine. But this time, the screen is silent. At first, they tell themselves you're busy, maybe you're resting. Maybe you'll text later, but as the hours pass, something unfamiliar settles in their chest. They suddenly realize something they never had to think about before. You're not reaching for them the way you used to, and that small absence feels louder than expected. For the first time, they begin remembering the little things they once overlooked. How you were always the one asking if they were okay. How your care quietly held the connection together. When someone grows used to receiving love without effort, they rarely notice its value while it's there. But the moment that love begins to fade, the silence it leaves behind becomes impossible to ignore. And that silence is where regret first begins to grow. Part 3. When memories start returning. Regret has a strange way of appearing when life becomes quiet. It doesn't show up during busy hours or crowded moments. It appears later, in the stillness of the night, when the mind begins wandering through old memories once overlooked. At first, it's small things, the way you listened patiently, the way you understood without making everything about yourself, the way you forgave when you could have walked away. Back then, those moments felt ordinary. They assumed you would always be there, always understanding, always reaching out first. But now those memories carry a different weight. Something inside them whispers a difficult truth. You didn't stop caring suddenly. You slowly grew tired of loving someone who no longer noticed your effort. They remember the times you tried to explain how you felt, the moments your voice sounded softer than usual, the times you stayed even when leaving would have been easier. And suddenly they see what they never truly saw before. You were giving them a kind of love many people spend their whole lives searching for. They were so used to receiving it, they forgot to protect it. Regret doesn't shout. It sits quietly in the heart, reminding someone that the love they once had so easily was never as ordinary as they believed. Part 4. When your absence begins to speak. There comes a point when regret stops being a passing thought and starts feeling personal. Maybe something good happens in their life, and without thinking, they reach for their phone to tell you. For a long time, you were the first person they shared things with. You celebrated even their smallest victories. Now they pause, because the person who once cared the most isn't there anymore. Other times, regret appears on difficult days. Part 4. When your absence begins to speak. There comes a point when regret stops being a passing thought and starts feeling personal. Maybe something good happens in their life, and without thinking, they reach for their phone to tell you. For a long time, you were the first person they shared things with. You celebrated even their smallest victories. Now they pause, because the person who once cared the most isn't there anymore. Other times, regret appears on difficult days. You used to notice when something felt off. You asked simple questions that made them feel understood. Your love supported them quietly, without asking for attention. Now the silence feels heavier. When a love like that disappears, the space it leaves behind becomes impossible to ignore. They begin to realize something painful. You were never just there. You were the emotional safety they didn't know they depended on, and understanding that after you've already stepped away is what makes their regret so painfully quiet. Part 5. The realization that comes too late. Then comes the moment they never expected. No drama, no sudden arguments, just a quiet realization that changes everything. You didn't leave because you stopped loving them. You left because loving them began to hurt more than staying ever should. For a long time, they believed you would always be there. They believed your patience had no limit, that your kindness would return no matter how little they nurtured it. Now they understand something regret often teaches too late. Love doesn't disappear all at once. It slowly grows tired of being unnoticed. And when someone who once gave everything finally chooses peace instead, the silence they leave behind becomes unforgettable. People rarely miss love while they're receiving it every day. They miss it when the person who once gave it freely learns how to live without giving it anymore. And by then, the version of you who loved without limits may already be gone, not out of anger, but out of growth. And maybe the real lesson in all of this is simple. Never beg someone to see your value. The right person will never need to lose you to understand what you meant. If you were the one who stayed too long, if you were the one who loved patiently, if you were the one who gave chance after chance until your heart grew tired, let this be your reminder. Walking away doesn't mean you stopped loving. It means you finally started loving yourself too. And if someone out there is slowly realizing what they lost, that realization is not your responsibility anymore. Your responsibility is your peace, your growth, your healing. Because the truth is, the love you gave so freely was never ordinary. It was rare. And rare things are not meant to be taken for granted. If this message spoke to your heart, write "I choose peace" in the comments. Let that be your declaration. And if you believe love should be valued before it becomes a memory, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs this reminder today. This is pure wisdom, where we don't chase love. We understand it. And sometimes the greatest power is not in holding on, but in knowing when to let go.